we're going to move on to our students' perspective. So Kristen and Connor are here with us today. I think that they both have their cameras on, so I think what I'll probably do is I will stop sharing my screen so you can see them and get to know them a little bit better. Kathy, do you mind still filtering through those open questions? I know that there's some about transcript entry and some, you know, specific classes.
I'll start from
like
the
that.
top again and see where we're at.
What?
Yeah, I said I'll start from the top again and see where we're at, because we've gone through so many, I don't know what.
Right. Well, and I've tried to say that I've answered the ones that we've answered live too. So,
Okay.
so Kathy will do that, but otherwise we will hand it over to our students. So I'll monitor those questions coming in specifically for our students. Actually, here's what I'd like you to do, if you wouldn't mind. If you have specific questions for our students, if you could put those in the chat and send them either privately to me or send them, you know, to everybody, that's totally fine. That way Kathy can keep going with those questions in the chat, but we can have those specific questions for our students as well. So, so welcome Connor and Kristen. Thank you for being here. So what I'll have you do is let me stop sharing my screen here. And then if you wouldn't mind taking it away, and Kristen, do you want to maybe start? Introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, where you're from, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, can you hear me? Or can you hear
me? I
me?
cannot hear you.
Oh, okay, wait. Oh, wait, can you hear me now? Or
yes, now I can hear you. Yep, you're quiet, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Maybe can you hear me if I do this? Sorry.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kristen Hasegawa. I'm going to be a second year here at Iowa State's CVM, and I'm actually from Maui, Hawaii. And yeah, I'm interested in mixed animals, but it could change depending on what track I want to go on. So yeah.
Perfect. And Connor, do you want to give a shout out, introduce yourself? Well, it said it did not connect to audio. Oh no. I can't hear you. I wonder if you unplug your headset. Can you unplug your headset and just use the computer mic?
All right, how about this? Can you guys hear me? All right, I'm using my computer, so I apologize. I don't have internet. I just moved, so I'm still trying to figure out using my phone as a hotspot. So.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay. So yeah, sorry about that. My name's Connor McGriff. I'm getting ready to start my first year at Iowa State as a member of the class of 2024. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, but I've lived here for about 15 years, so I consider Iowa my home. I just recently moved to Ames from Cedar Rapids, so we're still getting everything unpacked and ready to go, but it's very exciting.
Great. So if you guys could maybe talk just a little bit about your application kind of experience, just like in a nutshell, you know, maybe when did you apply, you know, what kind of, a little bit about your credentials that you came in with, all of that kind of stuff. Kristen, if you want to go first.
Yeah, so I actually, in high school, I didn't have a lot of animal experience. I was mainly focused in like the musical department. So when I came to college, that's when I really got a lot of my animals experience. And I have a list on the side here. So So I actually didn't get animal experience until the summer of my freshman year. So then I worked at a vet hospital, and from there I started realizing like, oh, if I want to apply and become a competitive applicant, that I really need to, step up on my experiences. So from there, I approached my undergrad at the time, and they said, oh, you can volunteer at these places. And so I actually got experience working with rehabbing turtles at the turtle rescue team, and I worked at the equine unit at my school, along with riding with a mobile vet. And a lot of these experiences were in the span of 3 years. So yeah, my experiences are probably a lot less than a lot of my cohort or my colleagues. However, like the variety of what I wanted to get was more important to me. And I think that was why I became a kind of a more competitive applicant, not just getting experience in one field.
Great, thanks, Kristen. How about you, Connor?
Yeah, so for me, I actually didn't even consider going to vet school until after I already graduated. So I knew I wanted to work with animals. During my undergrad, I majored in psychology and physiology, so I was working more with dog training, and eventually started working with training military and police canines. So after I graduated, I actually started working part-time in a general practice hospital, veterinary hospital, and I just really liked it. And then shortly after that, I switched to working at the Eastern Iowa Veterinary Specialty Center. So that's a 24-hour emergency center and referral center. And I just really fell in love with it. So at that point, I went back and so I graduated in 2016. And then after that summer of 2016, I decided to go ahead and go back to school, and we're taking classes part-time to meet the prerequisites to apply. So I've been working full-time as a vet tech in the same hospital, and then also going to class part-time for about 3 years. So I just kind of calculated the numbers, and I have about 6,000 hours of vet tech experience, about 2,000 hours of dog training and handling, and then about 500 hours in research. I briefly worked in the gait analysis lab at the University of Iowa. Then also just various other, like I was a crew leader for a moving job. I did tutoring and was a lab instructor as well. So all that comes to about 10,000 hours, which that I think is really what set me apart. But that's a very lofty goal, and don't be intimidated by that, because I've been working full time for 3 years since graduating. So that's why that number is so lofty. But I definitely think that's what helped me the most, was just the number of hours I've had.
Great, perfect, thank you. So we do have a question from Rachel here in the chat box. And just a reminder for students, if you wouldn't mind putting questions that you have specifically for our students in the chat box versus the Q&A, that'll kind of help us try and answer some of those questions while we've got this session going on. Kristen, we've got a question here from Rachel that says, how was your experience as an out-of-state student at Iowa State? And how do you think maybe being from Hawaii, or maybe even just as an out-of-state student, how do you think that maybe helped your application?
So my experience as an out-of-state student right now, it's been really nice, and people in Iowa are really nice, and all the faculty and the staff and the professors are really helpful, and especially that's from this one semester alone, you really see how much the professors really put the effort, and the administration and the faculty and the deans, and it's just amazing on how fast they work and how adaptable everything is. For being putting Hawaii as my application, I don't really think it matters. I think what your experiences are and what kind of academic profile you have really stands out more than where you're actually from, in my opinion. But in my year, there are maybe 2 people from Hawaii along with me, so that's been really nice as well.
Great, perfect. So question here from Amy Joy, who asks, why did each of you choose Iowa? So Connor, do you want to go first, and then Kristen can take over?
Yeah, so I chose Iowa because that was actually the only school that I got into. So that made that decision easy for me. I did also apply to Colorado State. So I chose those two, Iowa State just because it was close to home. And then the biggest thing with those two schools is they didn't require physics 2 or organic chemistry 2. So I had never taken those two classes, so that was nice to avoid taking those. So yeah, it was a little bit less requirements, or I guess not less, but just they more meshed of what happened to coincide with what I took for undergrad. So that's why I chose that, and it worked out well being closer to family and closer to home. And it's a lot more affordable to the in-state tuition compared to out-of-state tuition at other schools.
Mhm. Great, thank you.
So
And
I'll answer,
Kristen?
yeah, so I'll answer this question right now. How many schools did you apply to? So being an out-of-state student, I really didn't have any contract states. There is the WICHE for Hawaii. However, it's kind of hard to get the money for it. So I actually applied to 8 schools, which is a lot, I think, to a lot of people, especially for a lot of my friends who are only applied to Iowa State. But I chose Iowa State because when I visited the school, the people are really nice. When I met like Miss Gerber, she was really nice, and um, just the overall feel of it. I would recommend, no matter what school you get into or what school you want to apply to, you should definitely go to the campus and see what it's like over there, because what you see on the laptop screen or through other people is not gonna be a good it could be a good indicator. But if you set your foot in campus and you say like, yeah, I really like it here, and yeah, that's pretty much why I really enjoyed it. But I got into 3 other schools, and I was actually waitlisted at Iowa. And when I got off the waitlist, then I declined the other schools that took me in.
Great. And Kristen, if I can follow up, so what was it? So was it just kind of the environment at Iowa State that made
Oh,
you kind of decline that other offer, or was it
it was
like cost, all of that kind of, what kind of was the
Oh,
factors?
sorry. I actually chose it as well as with the curriculum. So Iowa State's really interesting, where a lot of my colleagues right now are interested in a mixed animal practice, and a lot of other vet schools, a lot of call the people will try and do small animals instead, or like the majority will come in as small animals. But I think our classes are really cool, where because Iowa is such a huge production state, I think the vet school really tries to help out those producers as well and give us the curriculum that we need to do that as well.
Great, perfect. And Connor, I'm sure, like you said, cost was a big factor for you, but is there something about kind of our program that you're maybe most excited about, coming in as a first year student?
Yeah, I'm excited about the big class size. So Iowa State, I think, is the largest or the second largest. It's definitely up there. So second largest, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very similar. My class, even just the psych school, I graduated with like 500 kids in my class. So I'm used to the bigger class size. I like having the wide variety of people to interact with, and just getting the different opinions and views. But like she said, Kristen said, is more focused on the mix, where I do want to do the small animal more, but I do like having the option. Obviously you're going to get exposed to, regardless of what path you take, it's nice to have that exposure to the large animals as well.
Perfect, thank you. So a question here from Melanie. What advice do each of you have to students pursuing vet school admission? So what's one piece of advice? Kristen, I saw you nod your head. Do you have an answer?
Just getting exposed, I would say just getting exposed to as much of the sciences as you can is really going to be helpful. So in undergrad, I had a nutrition class, a reproduction class, biology, organic chemistry, biochem. And those are a lot of the prerequisites, or not nutrition, but I would say the more you can get exposed to it, then it'll help you be more successful. I learned that like this past semester we took immunology, and this was my first time taking immunology, so it was kind of a struggle for me. But I when we had nutrition last semester in the fall, I found that class to be kind of a little bit easier, because I had a lot of nutrition background. So yeah, getting a lot of experience in that.
Great. Okay. What about you, Connor?
Yeah, I would say it's important to start looking as soon as possible at what the prereqs are going to be for the schools that you're applying for. And you don't necessarily need to worry so much about your overall GPA, but make sure that you do well in those courses that are the prereqs. For one thing, that is important. They do look at that when they're deciding who to admit. And then also, to be frank, if you can't do well in those classes, it's a good indication that you need to change your study habits or change something up to be able to succeed at the next level anyway. And then also just with the starting early, making sure that you start developing relationships to get like letters of recommendations and stuff like that sooner rather than later. I actually didn't really stay in contact with any of my professors or anything, and I wish I had done that. But so I still had plenty from doctors, and I used my not counselor, my advisor from college. So that's who I used as my academic resource to write a letter of recommendation. But definitely just start thinking about letters of recommendation and doing well in those prereq courses as soon as possible.
Great. And then that kind of bounces off a question that I wanted to ask you guys. What were those letters of recommendation? Like, who would you maybe, who did you use, or maybe give some advice about choosing those letters?
Yeah, I can go
Connor,
first.
do you want to? Okay, yep.
So my goal was to get one from an academic resource, of someone from Iowa, the University of Iowa, where I graduated from. And then I wanted to get one from an employer. So I used the hospital administrator at the Eastern Iowa Veterinary Specialty Center. And then also I wanted to get at least one from a veterinarian that I worked with. So I got 4 different letters of recommendations from veterinarians that I worked with at the current hospital that I work with. So I would say trying to do one of those 3, but ultimately just doing whoever you have the best relationship and is going to best represent you and show that you're a good fit for vet school.
Yeah, I have to agree with Connor. Just making sure that you have really solid people, and you know, they can write you a positive letter of recommendation, because that's a good keyword, positive. But for me, I asked my professors, a lot of my professors, one veterinarian that I did an internship with, and I actually asked my organic chemistry professor because I really enjoyed his class, and he got to know me pretty well. And I actually took I took one extra course with him. And so when I asked him, you know, can you write me a letter? He's like, yeah, sure. So it could be pretty much anybody, but make sure that, you know, they're able to write you a positive letter of recommendation.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. So Afra asks, how do you recommend the best way of getting to know the campus in light of the COVID situation? Is ISU still allowing physical student visits? So that's more, I think, a question that I can tackle versus our students. But unfortunately, right now, essentially, Iowa State has said that, you know, we're not allowing visitors on campus unless there's, you know, a you know, necessary reason for them to be there, which really means, you know, a lot of people who are, you know, delivering things or whatever. So right now, unfortunately, even our students are being asked to stay primarily out of the building, which I think is probably hard. And maybe you can share kind of your experience on getting to know the school without actually being there. We do have some resources on our YouTube channel and a Facebook Live tour, and I can send those out when I send out a follow-up email after this. But so maybe Connor and Kristen, you know, both coming from not Ames, what are some maybe good ways that you learned a little bit more about Iowa State and Ames in general? Either one, whoever wants to go first. Kristen, you got it?
I can go first, I guess. Yeah. So because I was actually in undergrad at North Carolina State University, and I didn't really visit Iowa, but I looked at the YouTube videos, and I also went to the application website and the college's main website as well. And yeah, that's pretty much all I did. And then when I got waitlisted, I decided to come and see the campus as well. Yeah,
Great.
sorry.
No, that's perfect. Thanks.
Yeah, I would agree that videos are going to be the best way to do that now. I know for our class preview day, they did a virtual tour, which they just posted, so you can even go and watch the same one that I watched. And it's not the same, obviously, as actually going there, because I visited the school way back when I was in middle school, but I hadn't actually been on campus for years. So yeah, I just did everything virtually through YouTube videos, and I think that the virtual tour was on the Facebook page, I believe.
Yep. Mhm. Yeah, and so one of the things, like Connor said, so we have preview days during for our waitlisted and admitted students, and those are generally in the spring, right before, right after decisions are sent out, but before before that April 15th national decision date. Hopefully we can welcome students back by then, and then we're constantly obviously monitoring the situation and trying to figure out what's the best way to get out or reach out to students and kind of connect with you guys. So as soon as we know more information, we'll definitely share it with you. But Delana asks Connor, how has your experience been different having a couple of years working full time versus applying during undergrad?
I think it's really helped me a lot with obviously I don't know the diagnostics and part like that, but I'm already really comfortable working with clients and explaining bad news with clients. We do a lot of stuff like blood draws, so the technical skills, lab work, stuff like that. I feel like I have a good grasp on the technical side of things, so now I just need to go back to school to get more of the educational side of things. I will say it would have been a disadvantage for me if I wasn't going to class part-time. I think that'd be a huge shock to take 3 or 4 years off and then go right back into vet school full-time. So it's good that I continue to take at least one class, but even still, I know I'm going to have to do my best to hit the ground running, because it's going to be a big change of pace for me to go back to being a full-time student, because I haven't been a full-time student since 2016, so it's been a while.
Great, thank you. So a couple of questions for Kristen. So are you interested in working with exotic animals since you have such a kind of mixed experience?
Yeah, for now, I'm not really sure what I want to work on. Everything has been really interesting, and coming into vet school, I thought I was gonna maybe do small animal or mixed, but I don't know, anything could change. And because Iowa again is so into production medicine, and I think that's really cool as well, it could also change. So maybe I want to work with exotics. I'm not too sure, but yeah, sorry.
That's perfect. That's great. So, and then how are online classes treating you as a vet student?
Yeah, online classes are very different, I think, from in class. Of course, I think the biggest thing that we saw was in our anatomy labs. And so we spent around maybe 6 hours on our actual scheduled time in the anatomy lab. And we also spent like countless hours out of school hours over there. So we weren't able to, dissect our specimens, and overall it's just very difficult working from home and studying without your classmates. Your classmates are really your support group, and it's been quite difficult, I think, to see the motivation, but overall, yeah, somehow it worked out in the end. I can't wait to go back though. I can probably speak on behalf of our whole class.
Yeah. It's been obviously different. Yeah, not having you guys here too. Well, here I'm working from home now too. So it's been a while since I've been in vet med too. So we do have a question that's in the Q&A versus the chat, which is totally okay. What are some essay tips that you guys might have? What are some tips that you used when you were writing those essays?
I really focused on being able to problem solve and work with other people, because that's a big part of veterinary medicine. Is it's such a broad field that you're not going to be exposed to everything you need to know in the 4 years of vet school. So I really heavily focused on, like I said, I majored in psychology, so it was a really research heavily focused degree. So I've talked a lot about being able to take in information and use scientific methods to to come to the best solution. And then again, just being able to work with people who you don't necessarily agree with, or people who come from different backgrounds and cultures. I talked a lot about that as well.
Yeah, for me as well, I think for my essay, that was around 2 years ago when I wrote that. But I remember I focused on one specific thing that really like stood out to me, I think. Because in your experiences, you're gonna list everything like what you've done and what you've learned. But then in your personal essays or the essays that you're going to submit, that's when the admissions committee is really gonna see like what how this impacted you and stuff. So I would say just to get some essay and essay tips, you should keep a like a little log, and every day if you work, just write down what you've experienced, and it could be something mundane or something really cool, but it'll help you with your essay writing as well.
Great, perfect. A couple more questions that are more geared towards Kristen, you as a current student. With the large class sizes, does that make it hard to connect with students and professors? And does it make it harder to access kind of hands-on experiences?
Even though the class size right now is around 125 without the UNL students right now, um, it's not, it doesn't seem that big at all. The professors are really helpful, and they make it a, they make it a job, or they let me just say they know your names and they know your face, because we all have a directory, and they know who's in class and who's not in class, and who needs help. And in fact, I kind of didn't do very well on the first round of exams, so they personally called me in, and I was like, oh yes, now you know my name and my face. But it's really reassuring that you're not in this alone. You have your professors and you have your cohort to help you out, and it's not like you're going through this alone. And this this is going to be your family for the next 4 years. You're going to spend a lot of time with these people, so make sure that you're all in this together, pretty much. And I see another question saying, how much hands-on experience do students get in their first year? So because we're constantly studying, and I think first year is kind of like um, that stage where you're switching from some undergrad or full-time job, and you're going back to the books, and it's a lot more intense. A lot of my friends don't really get a lot of hands-on experience, I would say. I think through wet labs that clubs provide, and those different opportunities, that's how you get your hands-on experience in first year. But there are some of my cohort that do have jobs, and I'm just amazed by them, because it's not the curriculum is not easy. Yeah.
So Connor, in your perspective as an incoming student, are there ways that you've, been able to maybe connect with some incoming students as well, even before orientation?
Yeah, I would say there's actually a Facebook page that you can join if you're a member of the class. It's like a private group, so it's only people in your class that can post on it. So right now, we're just people have just been posting pictures of their pets and introducing themselves. So that's about the best we can do for now. Yeah, so that's fun. And then people there are looking for roommates and stuff like that. So especially if you're already up in the Ames area, I know with the social distancing, there's very little you can do, but at least online and even Zoom meetings, stuff like that. I've done that with some of my friends. So connecting, via Zoom is a good way to meet your classmates and just introduce yourself via social media. Stuff like that is a good idea to get the ball rolling at least.
Great. Okay, well, I want to thank you guys for being here. If you don't mind hanging on for just a couple of more minutes, I think we'll kind of wrap up with maybe this question that kind of focuses a little bit more on mental health and wellness. And so from Kristen's perspective, first, if you could talk about some of the things we have access to as a current student, also maybe some ways that you like, it says like favorite, like study habits, all of that kind of stuff. So how do you kind of balance studying and wellness? And then I'm going to turn it over to Connor then, and maybe you could talk a little bit about kind of coming into vet school. Are there, certain things that you're kind of acknowledging that you're like, okay, I got to, make sure I'm kind of prepped for this in some way. So Kristen, I'll let you go, and then Connor, you can kind of think about that and then take over.
Yeah, so we do have counseling services at the vet school. I haven't really utilized them, but there are some of my classmates that have, and they're just really nice there. And so I think you don't have to schedule an appointment, but they're usually always available, I think. Or I do know that some of them go from main campus to here, the CVM campus. But favorite ways to study, I found out that I like studying with groups and just getting different perspectives from different people and kind of forming your answer. And with the online classes and the changes with the scheduling, working with a group is really helpful. Yeah, I think that's like my favorite strategy that I've learned.
Perfect. Thank you. Connor, what about you coming into vet school?
Yeah, so going off the counseling thing, I do think it's important to be aware of this mental health and the stress associated with being a veterinarian. Even in the, just as a technician, I see things die. Sometimes 10 animals die in front of me in a single day, and being able to be aware that that can be really dragging on you. So I do see a therapist, I do see a psychiatrist. So just being aware that that might drag on you, and that might be something you have to seek out. So it's important to seek help if you need it, and there's nothing wrong at all with it. Like I said, I do it personally, and it helps me a lot. I see a therapist about once a month, so it's about a half hour once a month, and even that is enough to help me a lot. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge time commitment. And then also just making sure that you do still do something fun. So I moved up here with my family, so it's good. My wife and my 1-year-old daughter. So it's good to have that support system and the positivity and another side of my life. Even if sometimes work can be a drag, I get to come home and I make sure to get outside, take my dog for a walk, stuff like that. Just making sure that even, especially with the whole COVID stuff, it's been a very strange time. So it's been weird, being at home all day with my family all day, every day is a little different. And, you don't get that distance and stuff, which is important. And it's really important to be aware of how different things affect you. And especially when you go into school, and it's a very stressful, difficult school from what I've heard, at least. So I'm being prepared for that, and I'm ready to seek out help when I need it. And I think it's important to be aware of that.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. If you, completely forgot to ask you this earlier, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. But if you wouldn't mind if some of our attendees reach out if they have further questions, if you click on send to all panelists and attendees, if you wouldn't mind sharing your contact information, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, they can email me, and I can kind of connect them with other veterinary student ambassadors too. But if you're able to and want to put that in the chat, go for it. Sorry, like I said, I'm putting you on the spot. I didn't forewarn you about that or about that ask, but I just wanted to say thank you. I know you guys are, like you said, navigating COVID, navigating, the start of a summer, and I just appreciate you guys being here. So thank you, thank you, thank you.